The emergency lights pulsed dim red, casting long, twitching shadows of the shattered corridor. Cadet Mara Lin came with blood in her mouth and the taste of static in her throat. Her suit was torn across the hip, her left arm wouldn't respond, and something wet and warm was leaking into her boot. But she was breathing, the wreck growing around her like a wounded animal. She blinked hard. The world was upside down. She was still strapped to her crash chair in auxiliary ops, hanging at an angle, floor half tilted, bodies weightless, drifting. Her head throbbed with memory fragments, alarms, shouting, Commander Hale's voice on the ship-wide channel, the order to retreat, SEAL Section 8, priority fallback. Then silence. Her hand trembled as she reached for the control panel. It was dead. Manual unlocks took 3 tries before the restraint hissed and released her. She floated gently, knees curled, swallowing back the rising bile. The other chairs were empty or worse. One still had a technician slumped in it, helmet caved in. Voss looked away. Diagnostic, she croaked, throat raw. No response. Not even the ping of the ship's basic AI. She pulled herself along the overhead grips, navigating past scattered debris. A broken data pad, scorched plating, aglow with no hand inside. In the main junction, she found power, flickering, weak. She tapped into a wall terminal. Static hissed. Then a fragment of audio came through. Cadet Mara Lin, presumed Kia, no retrieval viable. Section 8 integrity compromised. Seal and proceed to fallback vector. Authorization, Commander Rexton Hale. The blood drained from her face. She replayed it twice, standing still in the cold. Then once more, just to be sure. Presumed Kia, she repeated flatly. He'd known she was alive. She'd been calling for extraction as the Zorians hit the flank. She'd held the bulkhead for 7 minutes alone while her unit retreated. That wasn't presumption. That was disposal. Her knuckles went white on the console edge. The terminal shorted, sparks snapping at her fingers. She didn't flinch. It took her an hour to stabilize life support. The auxiliary tanks and maintenance were partially intact, enough to give her 60 hours, maybe 70 if she rationed oxygen. The internal temperature had dropped to 6 degrees Celsius. She patched her suit with an old thermoseal patch from a corpse in medbay and pulled a thermal cowl tighter. The bridge was sealed, flooded with radiation from a breach relay. Engineering was gutted, but the AI core still flickered in standby behind security glass. The systems were damaged, fragile, fragmented, but not dead. Come on, she whispered, rerouting emergency power. Lights blinked once, twice. Then a weak voice echoed from the console. TSV Retribution Core AI. Low function operational. Access tier restricted. Welcome, Cadet Voss. She exhaled slowly. Gimme systems inventory. Primary weapons. Offline. Reactor. Stable. Hull integrity. 42%. Life support. Partial. Communications. Damaged. Subspace drive. Dead. Dead. But breathing. Like her, she drifted past a collapsed section, brushing ice off a viewport to peer into black space. A cold, dry husk of a planet spun below. No satellites. No patrols. No one coming. In the crew quarters, she found a box of rations, a field tool set, and a full canister of recycled water. She made camp in Operations Nest, one of the few pressurized sections with backup heat. Hours passed. She worked in silence. Stitched her leg. Ran blood loss calculations. Drank. Ate, rested. But her thoughts kept circling the same question. Why did he leave her? Not a tactical error. Not chaos. Hale was too precise for chaos. He had broadcast her death while she was still transmitting her survival status. He'd known she was alive and left anyway. And now she was a liability. If she returned, she would expose him. So he wrote her off, sealed her fate with a voice log, and continued upward. She accessed flight logs. The Retribution hadn't gone down in a blaze of honor. It had been designated irretrievable and left in orbit as chaff to distract or bait Zorian scouts. Hale had sacrificed the ship and her to save face after a failed engagement. Her fists clenched. The ship groaned again, deep in its bones. Not just metal fatigue, resonance. She froze. Diagnostics pulsed. Weapons architecture. Still partially linked to the reactor core. She tapped in. The plasma batteries were gone, overloaded and blown. But missile pods remained. Their autoloaders offline, targeting core scrambled, but the launch bays were intact. The spinal beam cannon, buried deep in the keel, showed a ghost of a power readout. Run weapons diagnostic. Level 3 detail, she said. Warning, systems non-optimal. Beam cannon 18% functional. Targeting manual only. Manual. She let the idea settle like dust. She could aim it if she rebuilt the relay, if she rerouted controls, if she survived long enough. She leaned back in the floating dark. Then she smiled. Later, when she was patching a guidance circuit near the old sensor tower, she heard something strange. A ping. Low frequency. Not Terran. A Zorian drone. She froze, listening. The sound was repeating. A proximity scan, non-aggressive but alert. It thought retribution was salvage. It hadn't seen her yet. She killed the beacon, rerouted signal decay to dead comms. Held her breath. The ping faded. She exhaled, then laughed quietly. She had an idea. In a darkened command alcove, she began sketching. Wires, relays, power loops. She mapped the firing vector of the spinal cannon by hand, reprogrammed the AI interface to accept her biometrics as command override, reconstructed the forward scope. Then she overrode the NAV silent protocol and accessed Terran fleet net history. Commander Hale, still active, now the captain of the TAS Warden, a newer, shinier ship, commanding fleet units near the Expanse's edge. If she could forge a black box distress ping, if she could convince the right eyes that Retribution held strategic data, he'd come to tie loose ends. And she'd be ready. Log entry, she said, staring into the cracked lens of a recording node. Cadet Mara Lin. Terran ID 32-71 KJ. Ship, Retribution. Status, alive. She paused. Abandoned. Not dead. Not gone. She looked out the porthole into the stars. You left me behind, Commander, but you forgot to take the guns. The Retribution wasn't a corpse. It was a wounded animal, quiet and twitching, waiting for someone to pick through its bones or wake up screaming. Mira Voss was determined to do the latter. She climbed out of the ventilation access crawl beneath the dorsal spine, shoulders aching, soup-caked in insulation grime. She just bypassed a melted relay node feeding power to the forward missile bay. It wasn't elegant, but the system pinged green. One launcher, operational, at least on paper. One down, she muttered, tapping her wrist tool against the hull plating. 500 to go. The ship groaned again, the same deep metal vibration that echoed through her bones like a warning or a growl. Mira had started cataloging those groans. Sectional stress, hull warping, internal venting. But they weren't dying sounds. They were breathing ones. She returned to the drone bay 3 hours later. It stank of scorched ceramic and ozone. The drone she disabled yesterday, an old Terran salvage unit, lay split open on a diagnostic slab. Its sensor dome was cracked, but the power core was intact. AI, give me a read on the integrity of DR-7 salvage drone. Core output, 73%. Mobility, impaired. Sensor suite, 44%. AI link, corrupted. Weapons, inactive. Strip the AI and control it manually. I'll feed commands through neuroproxy. Warning, manual override of Class B drone exceeds cadet clearance. She stared at the terminal. You want a chain of command? File a complaint. There was a brief pause. Override accepted. She smiled. By night cycle. She had the drone's treads working. It jittered when it moved, one leg dragging slightly, but it responded to her voice and followed simple pathing. She equipped it with a modified arc torch and sent it to sever ruined conduits in the port side gunnery. One fewer hazard waiting to kill her in the dark. In the quiet, she thought of her classmates. Most of them hadn't made it out when the ambush hit. A few might have, assuming Hale hadn't left them too. She tried not to dwell. Instead, she focused on one thing, waking the guns. Her biggest challenge was the spinal beam cannon, buried in the keel of the Retribution. The weapon was the ship's primary long-range asset. It was built to crack cruisers in half. But its targeting array was fried, the power grid ruptured, and it hadn't fired since the opening days of the war. And Mira was going to light it. She descended through maintenance shafts that hadn't seen human presence in months. Dust drifted in zero-G clouds. The silence down there was heavier, like pressure against her helmet. She reached the firing chamber. Cables hung in loose arcs. The control chair had been melted down to slag. Emergency foam covered half the wall, where a reactor leak had burst through the insulation layers. And yet, power still trickled into the focusing coils. She ran diagnostics by hand, tapping out calculations with trembling fingers. It was possible, if she could reprogram targeting, restore capacitors manually, and recalibrate from an external vector, she could take one shot, a kill shot. Later, eating protein paste with shaking hands. She recorded another log. Status report. Spinal cannon at 18% operational capacity. Power reroute viable. Targeting, however. She paused. Targeting's the trick. I'll need a lure. I need him in range. And stationary. A warning light blinked. She frowned, rising slowly. Sensor ping. Unfriendly. Near orbit. Low-intensity scanner sweep. Likely a Zorian drone ship, possibly long-range reconnaissance. She rushed to the forward scope. There was a slender wedge of dull gray cutting across the black. No weapons active. No escorts. Just a ghost ship, like hers, sniffing for scraps. She dropped behind a bulkhead, shut down all active emissions, and waited. Minutes passed. The drone drifted by. No reaction. No alerts. But it had scanned her. That was enough. They'd know Retribution was still in orbit. Damaged. Derelict. Which meant they'd report it. Which meant she had less time than she thought. Back in the Central Comms relay, she flicked on her makeshift beacon patch. AI. Begin constructing false signal. Format. High priority distress. Tag. Command level black box intact. Encryption class. Pre-reform era. Parameters confirmed. Signal integrity. Low. Recommend increased power draw for authenticity. Pull from heat regulation. I'll live colder. The beacon began transmitting. Slow pulses in an old Earth military band. Only fleet commanders still recognized that code. And one in particular had been trained to respond to it. To erase what should never be found. Her breath fogged the air as environmental heat dropped 2 degrees. She sat alone in the flickering red dark, eyes on the hollow map, slowly blinking with each false signal burst. He'd see it. He'd come. And when he did, she would greet him with every weapon this ship still had breath to fire. The ghost ship spoke again. Low frequency. Encrypted bursts now pulsed from Retribution's ancient comms array, echoing across dead space like whispers meant only for one man. Commander Rexton Hale. Mira Voss watched the transmission cycle complete, then exhaled slowly. She'd routed the signal through 3 separate processors, fused together from comm relay scraps and half-burned logic boards. If Hale picked it up, it would look real, urgent, time-sensitive, and above all, worth silencing. A Terran black box beacon hadn't been seen in active space for over 2 years. Finding one was rare. Recovering it, politically priceless. Unless it held evidence that could bury someone. She leaned back against the cold bulkhead, her joints stiff from hours of crawling through unlit passageways. The thermal regulators were down again. Cold clawed its way into her bones, but she ignored it. Her eyes stayed fixed on the scope's empty return. He'd come. She spent the next day finishing the targeting alignment on the spinal cannon. Manual calibration required visual triangulation, so she had to float outside the ship, tethered to the keel by a single magnetic cable. She braced herself against twisted plating and adjusted the final emitter lens with gloved hands that could barely grip the tools. Her breath fogged the inside of her cracked helmet. AI confirm alignment. Spinal cannon targeting frame aligned within 2.6% of manual solution. Fire convergence, suboptimal. Viable hit probability, 62% within 30-kilometer range. Good enough. She didn't need elegance. She needed force. That evening, sitting in the wreck of the officer's mess, she played back Hale's voice again from the abandoned broadcast she'd found in the command logs. No viable recovery. Section 8 presumed compromised. Cadet Mara Lin, Kia. She stared at the wall, jaw tight. Still here, Commander. The AI pinged her late in the night cycle. Vessel detected. Terran IFF signature confirmed. TAS Warden. Arrival vector indicates response to black box signal. She didn't move right away. Just close her eyes. He was coming. The Warden dropped into orbit 4 hours later, sleek and full of life. Its hull gleamed with polished composite armor. Terran markings bold and fresh. Mira watched it from the observation blister above the dorsal ridge. Her face reflected in the cracked glass, pale and hard. It circled retribution, like a predator studying a carcass. No comms. No shuttles launched. Not yet. Then her console chirped. An open line request from Hale's ship. She keyed in the signal. Audio only. Mira. Her heart kicked, but her voice stayed level. Commander Hale. A long pause. We didn't know anyone survived. We monitored the sector for weeks. The retrieval logs were falsified, she cut in. You broadcast my death before the battle even ended. I made a call based on combat intelligence. You were presumed. Don't insult me. Then what do you want, Cadet? She looked at the half-lit ceiling of the nest, fingers resting on the jury-rigged firing panel. I want you in range. Silence, then a shift in Hale's tone. We're here to recover data and confirm final status of the vessel. No aggression intended. I'm sending over a team. You're sending no one. This ship is my command now. Mira, be reasonable. You're not thinking clearly. Whatever you found. I found the truth. I found your voice ordering my death. The signal stuttered. For a moment, only background noise hummed between them. That recording could ruin a lot of good men's reputations. Men who fought for the Alliance since the collapse. She nearly laughed. There it is. Then let's be practical. What do you want in return for silence? She paused, cold rising in her chest. You. What? I want you, Rexton. Stationary. At 30 clicks. Just long enough to watch what happens when a dead cadet pulls the trigger. She ended the transmission. Below her, Warden shifted position. Closer now, trying to bring retribution into scanning range. Maybe prepping weapons. Maybe not. Either way, it didn't matter. She stood. AI. Prepare cannon for discharge. Set firing solution based on current vector. Confirmed. Power routing initiated. Final capacitor charge in T-minus 180 seconds. She moved to the chair she'd welded together from old gunner frames and reactor paneling. It creaked beneath her weight. She strapped in. The interface lit, flickering like a dying heartbeat. Coordinates confirmed. Trajectory locked. Mira rested her fingers on the ignition controls. One more deep breath. This is for the cadets you left behind. And for me. The cannon throbbed to life. 3 seconds later, she fired. The cannon's recoil slammed through Retribution's bones like a war drum. The hull groaned. Vibrations rippled down Myra's spine as the charged plasma slugged tore through space, its trail a burning arc of vengeance. In the viewport, the Warden flinched. It didn't explode, not yet, but the blast sheared through its port stabilizers. Flames bloomed across the hull as the ship lurched sideways, venting atmosphere and sparks in a slow, spiraling drift. Mira unbuckled from the gunnery rig, heart hammering. AI status of target? Hit confirmed. Outer hull breached. Structural damage to flight control systems. Propulsion integrity compromised. Shields offline. Enemy vessel initiating distress protocol. They hadn't expected her to fire. Not really. Not at them. She limped to the comms console, hands flying over the keypad. Patch me through to the Warden. Secure line. direct to command deck. A pause. Then, connection open. Line encrypted. She didn't wait for him to speak. Hull breach. Plasma fire. You've got 20 minutes before containment fails. Silence stretched long and thin. Then his voice. Steady. You're making a mistake, Mira. You made it first. You could have disappeared. Lived. No one would have hunted you. Not good enough. She imagined Hale pacing the warden's bridge. Teeth clenched, weighing his legacy against the ship bleeding out beneath him. He was the kind of man who thought in tactics, not guilt. Tell your crew to abandon ship, she said. Escape pods. Now. And then what? Hale's voice was quiet now. Calculated. Let you finish this in silence? Let you write the last page. I already have. Escape pods began ejecting moments later. Tiny flashes dotted the darkness. Shards of light against the void. Mira watched them scatter. Most carried junior officers, tech crews, probably unaware they'd ever left a cadet behind. Then came the single signal she was waiting for. One escape pod remains on Warden. Occupant signature, Commander Rexton Hale. Status, stationary. He wasn't running. Of course he wasn't. Open direct channel. The line crackled. Still here. Why? You wouldn't understand. You're young. I'm the last voice you'll ever hear. Try me. A pause. Because if I leave now, history writes me as a coward. You'll be a martyr. The headlines will sing your name, and I'll fade. A footnote. A traitor. I'd rather die here and own my story than live under yours. She almost admired it. Almost. You abandoned us, Rexton. I made a choice. The mission was compromised. Orders were to cut losses. Those losses were people. Her voice cracked, raw. We were kids. You weren't ready for war. We didn't need war. We needed a leader. Silence. Only the low thrum of Retribution's ancient reactor echoed in her ears. What happens now? You have two options, she said quietly. Die screaming in that coffin when your ship fractures, or walk aboard this one unarmed. Surrender? No, just witness. 10 minutes later, the final pod drifted into Retribution's loading bay. Mira stood waiting in her ragged cadet uniform, pistol holstered, hands by her sides. She looked like a survivor, not a soldier, not a threat. The hangar's lights flickered overhead. Air was thin. The only thing breathing here was her. The hatch opened. Rexton Hale stepped out, hair slicked back, uniform pristine even in defeat. His eyes met hers and didn't flinch. He didn't offer words. He walked slowly, scanning the gutted hangar, the scorched catwalks, the flickering control nodes and exposed cable work. This ship should have died years ago, he muttered. She outlived you. They walked in silence to the main observation deck. Below them, the wreckage of the Warden drifted. Fires dying in vacuum. Mira tapped the panel behind her. A recording projected in the air. Hale's voice again. Clipped and cold. No recovery team. Cadet Mara Lin. Presumed Kia. He stared at it, then sat on the edge of the console. Slow. I thought you were gone. I made peace with it. With all of it. No, she said. You buried it. She turned the next file on. Her squad mates, their last transmissions. Screams. Static. Names choked out as bulkheads collapsed. He listened. Not a word. But she saw the twitch in his jaw, the flicker in his eyes. When the final log ended, Mira spoke. This ship was my grave. I made it my monument. You sent us to die for a lie. Now everyone will know. Then release it. Bury me. He leaned forward, voice flat. But I wasn't the only one who signed those orders. That recording, what do you think happens when it leaks? How many names burn with mine? That's not my problem. It will be. You've started a war. Political. Institutional. Your name becomes a banner. And when that banner rises, you become a target. She hesitated. Not from fear, but from recognition. She had turned herself into a symbol. And symbols bled. Still, her decision was already carved into steel. Then let them come. I'll be ready. Hale stood, straightened his cuffs. You win, Cadet. No, she shook her head slowly. I survive. That's different. That night, she transmitted the files. Hale's order, the black box data, the final logs of her crew, routed through dozens of anonymous relays, echoing across Alliance space. Somewhere far away, the story would break, and someone would read her name, not on a grave, but in fire. The storm didn't come with sirens. It came with silence. Mira watched from Retribution's shadowed observation deck as half the stars in the sky shifted, blinked out, then returned shaped like warships. Clean, cold, unmarked hulls bearing the ghost gray insignia of the Inner Command. Not Alliance, not Fleet, something older, something that didn't flinch at cover-ups or martyrs. 5 destroyers, 2 data interceptors. No open signals, said the AI, flatly. She clenched the railing, knuckles white. How fast did they respond? 17 hours since transmission. Impossibly fast. Presumed contingency protocols. They'd been waiting for something like this. Not her, but something cracked. The truth leaked, and the hammer followed. Behind her, footsteps echoed. Hale, hands cuffed in front of him, nodded toward the glass. They're not here for me, are they? She didn't answer. Protocol 6, he said quietly. Information breach. Wipe and reset. Burn the evidence, then the witnesses. And you knew. He looked tired. Why do you think I stayed behind? Mira moved quickly down the rusted corridors, past her makeshift command station, through the engine bay where a squad had once laughed and argued and died. She stopped at the core. Fingers danced over the console. AI, prepare overburn protocol alpha. Warning, reactor is not rated for overburn. Critical failure likelihood, 93%. Core breach, near certain. Good. She flicked open the safeties. Reactor shielding began to retract with a hiss. Back in the comm room, she faced a live feed, the lead destroyer's bridge. A masked officer stood there, faceless in a matte helmet. When he spoke, the voice was modulated, synthetic. Cadet Mara Lin, you are in possession of stolen, classified Alliance military data. Power down your vessel, immediately. Prepare for immediate boarding. Mira leaned forward. You're too late. A flick of her hand brought up the live reactor feed. The readout glowed red, unstable, loud, full of warning symbols. Retribution's going critical. Try to board, and we both disappear. That would be unwise. Then leave. You misunderstand. Your survival is not required. She muted the feed and looked to Hale, still shackled, still calm. He arched an eyebrow. You planning to bluff your way out of this? Not bluffing. She turned to the console. Her fingers trembled slightly as she typed. Not from fear. From decision. Final command authorization required. Confirm self-destruct lockout override. She hesitated. One keystroke. Then, AI new directive. Lock targeting system on lead destroyer. Load last shell. Confirmed. Plasma battery charged. The moment lasted forever. 5 ships pointed at her like judgment. One half-dead cruiser bleeding energy and spite, aiming its last gun. Mira took a breath. Then she fired. The second slug streaked out like lightning, blazing white, drawn straight from the core. The destroyer's automated shield snapped on, but it was too close, too confident. The round punched through its bow, erupting in a flare that lit space like a miniature sunrise. Chain reactions danced across its hull. Missile bays cooked off. Reactor staggered. Hull plating peeled back in molten curls. The bridge feed cut out mid-scream. The other ships didn't speak. They moved. Brace, she shouted. The Retribution lurched hard as counterfire slammed the outer hull. Structural beams groaned. The viewports cracked at the edges. The AI began spilling reports like blood. Shields gone. Hull breach, Deck 4. Reactor containment dropping. Life support failure imminent. Mira coughed. Smoke filtered through the vents. Lights blinked, but the targeting system was still alive. She loaded the final failsafe. A spike of energy thrummed deep below. Final burn capacitor active. 1 shot remaining. Hale staggered beside her. What are you doing? I'm not going down quiet. He stared at her for a moment. Then neither am I. Without waiting, he lunged at the console and hit the emergency transmission relay, sending everything Mira had, data, recordings, logs, video, to every civilian relay station within reach. She froze. You didn't. You said it yourself, he panted. You already wrote the ending. I'm just turning the page. Outside, the destroyers closing, but they weren't shooting anymore. The broadcast changed everything. Too public, too raw. Myra's logs didn't just implicate Hale. They exposed a black wing of the military no one admitted existed. Now retribution wasn't a target. She was a liability. They backed off. No transmissions. No apology. Just retreat. One by one, the ships disappeared into the dark. Mira slumped against the console, exhaling for the first time in hours. The AI spoke again. Threat withdrawn. No further engagement detected. Emergency course shutdown recommended. She reached for the control panel and collapsed. Mira awoke to cold white light, the antiseptic smell of med foam and recycled air. Above her, a human face, not Hale, a young woman in civilian clothes. You're safe, she said softly. We pulled you from the wreck. You're in a neutral system. The footage went viral. You're alive. Mira finished hoarsely. The woman nodded. And not alone. She gestured to a screen in the corner. Images flashed. Public outcry, protests, Senate hearings. Headlines blared across the feed. Cadet Voss exposes military cover-up. Retribution. Survivor shakes galactic order. Who gave the order? Later, in a quiet garden dome above the city, Mira stood alone. A plaque beside her bore the names of her squad. Real names now. Public. Honored. She placed her hand against it. No tears came. Only wind. Behind her, the woman from the medbay approached again. What will you do now? Mira looked out at the horizon. They buried me once, she whispered. Now I dig them up. She turned, eyes hard, voice steady. I'm not done.